Hugh Lofting's Travels of Dr. Dolittle, adapted for beginning readers by Al Perkins, illustrated by Philip Wend. Once upon a time, there was a doctor named John Dolittle, M.D. The M.D. meant that he was a doctor and that he knew a lot. Dr. Dolittle lived in a little town in England called Puddleby-on-the-Marsh. When he walked down the street in his high hat, all the dogs and cats and cows and horses and pigs and chickens and sheep and frogs and turtles ran after him. Instead of doctoring people, Dr. Dolittle doctored animals. He was very fond of animals, and animals were very fond of him. They came to his house from everywhere so that he could take care of them. Then, instead of going home again, they stayed. Soon his house was filled with all kinds of animals. There was barely enough room left for Dr. Dolittle himself. Dr. Dolittle gave names to some of his favorite pets. There was Dab-Dab the duck, and Jip the dog, and Gub-Gub the pig, Tutu the owl, and Polynesia the parrot. But the doctor had so many mice and canaries and hens and roosters and turtles and rabbits and hedgehogs and alligators and opossums and raccoons that he couldn't find names for them all. One rainy day, Polynesia the parrot said to Dr. Dolittle, "You have so many pets now that you must learn to talk with them. We will teach you animal language." Dr. Dolittle sat down in front of a blackboard. His pets gave him lessons. Soon he learned to talk with the animals. Soon he understood everything they said. Moo means hello. One night, after the doctor had learned the animal language, the door flew open. A monkey ran in. "Doctor," the monkey cried, "my name is Chi-Chi. I have come all the way from Africa to tell you about the monkeys. They have a terrible sickness. They beg you to come to Africa to cure them. Will you do it, please?" "Of course I will," said Dr. Dolittle. So early next morning, the doctor and Chi-Chi and Jip and Dab-Dab and Gub-Gub and Tutu and Polynesia took all their luggage down to the seashore. Dr. Dolittle got a boat from a sailor. Then they all went on board. For 6 weeks they sailed on and on over the rolling sea. When they got to the equator, they saw some flying fishes. The flying fishes said, "It is only 50 miles to Africa." But then a great storm came up with thunder and lightning. The wind howled. The rain poured down. The waves splashed over the boat. Suddenly there was a big boom. The ship stopped. It rolled over on its side. "Dear me," said the doctor, "we must have run into Africa." "Get the rope," cried Polynesia. "Dab-Dab, you take the end of the rope. Fly to the shore. Tie it to a palm tree. Then those who can't swim go down the rope until you get to the land." And that's how they all got safely to the shore. They all took shelter in a nice dry cave they found up in the cliffs. Suddenly Chi-Chi said, "Shh, I hear footsteps." They looked out and saw a soldier come out of the woods. He wore a mask over his face. He carried a shield and a long, sharp spear. "You must all come before the great king of the Jolliginki," he said. "All these lands belong to him. Follow me." When they had followed the soldier a little way through the forest, they saw the king's palace. The king was sitting under an umbrella. "You may not travel through my lands," said the king. Then he told his soldiers, "Take this medicine man away. Lock him and all his animals in my strongest prison." The prison had only one little window. It was high up in the wall with bars across it. The prison door was strong and thick. The walls were solid stone. Gub-Gub the pig began to cry. Even Dr. Dolittle looked worried. But Polynesia the parrot said, "I'm small enough to get through the bars of this window. Tonight I'll creep through the bars and fly to the palace. I'll find a way to make the king let you out." So that night the parrot flew to the palace. She crept into the king's bedroom very softly and hid under the bed. "I am Dr. Dolittle," said the parrot, just the way the doctor would have said it. "You cannot see me. I have made myself invisible. Now listen, I warn you. You let me and my animals travel through your kingdom, or I will make you sick like the monkeys. Send your soldiers to open the prison door, or you shall have mumps before the morning sun comes up." At those words the king began to tremble. He jumped out of bed. He told the soldiers to open the prison door. The doctor and all his animals rushed out of the prison. They ran through the forest toward the land of the monkeys. They ran as fast as they could. But when the king found out how he had been fooled by the parrot, he was dreadfully angry. He rushed around in his nightshirt. He woke up all his army. He sent them into the jungle to catch the doctor. Chee-Chee the monkey knew the paths through the jungle better than the king's soldiers did. He led the doctor and his pets to the thickest part of the forest. He hid them all in a big hollow tree. Chee-Chee said, "We must hide here while the soldiers are close by. Soon they will get tired and go back to bed." When the soldiers had all gone, Chee-Chee brought the doctor and his animals out of their hiding place. Then they set off for the land of the monkeys. And that very evening they saw a lot of monkeys. They were sitting in the trees, looking and eagerly waiting. When they saw the famous doctor, the monkeys made a tremendous noise. They cheered, they waved, they swung out on branches to greet him. But the king's soldiers hadn't gone to bed. They were still following. They saw Dr. Dolittle. They ran to catch him. The doctor and his animals ran harder than they had ever run in their lives. They came to a high place with a river far below it. The land of the monkeys was on the other side. Jip the dog looked over the edge and almost fell. "How are we ever going to get across?" he asked. Then the leader of the monkeys, the biggest one of all, cried out to the others, "Boys, a bridge! Quick, get lively! Make a bridge, a bridge!" And quick as a flash, the monkeys made themselves into a bridge. They did it by holding hands and feet and tails. They made a bridge of monkeys. And the big one shouted, "Walk over, all of you! Walk across our bridge!" Dr. Dolittle and his pets were all a bit afraid. Such a narrow bridge, and so high above the river. But all of them got over safely. The doctor was the last one to cross. Just as he reached the other side, the king's soldiers came rushing up behind them. They waved their swords, they threw their spears, they howled and they yowled, but they were too late. Dr. Dolittle and all his animals were safe in the land of the monkeys. The doctor found hundreds and thousands of very sick monkeys. He made all the monkeys come to be vaccinated. For 3 days and 3 nights they came from the jungles, they came from the valleys, they came from the mountains and hills. They came to a little house of grass where the doctor sat all day and all night, vaccinating, vaccinating, and vaccinating. And then, very soon, the monkeys began to get better. By then, the doctor was all worn out. He was so tired that he went to bed and slept for 3 days and 3 nights without even turning over. When he woke up, Dr. Dolittle saw that none of the monkeys were sick anymore. They were all well. His vaccinations had cured them all. So he told them that now he must go back home to Puddleby on the marsh. The monkeys were very surprised at this. They had hoped that the doctor would stay with them forever. That night they got together to talk things over. The big one got up and said, "It is sad that Dr. Dolittle must leave us, but since he must go, let us give him a fine present." "If you really want to please him," Chee-Chee said, "give him an animal, one he has never seen before." "An iguana? No. An okapi? No. A push-me-pull-you? Yes. No man has ever seen a push-me-pull-you. Let us give him a push-me-pull-you." Now, there aren't any push-me-pull-yous anymore, but then, when Dr. Dolittle was in Africa, there were still a few of them left. The push-me-pull-you had no tail. Instead, he had a head with horns, both in front and behind. Push-me-pull-yous with their two heads were very hard to catch. When one head went to sleep, the other head was always wide awake and watching. This is why they were never caught and never seen in zoos. To catch a push-me-pull-you for the doctor, the monkeys made a plan. Very, very quietly, they set out through the forest to hunt. They found a place where they thought the push-me-pull-you might be. Then they made a circle and joined hands. The push-me-pull-you heard them. He tried to break through the ring of monkeys, but he couldn't do it. He saw it was no use. He sat down and asked them what they wanted. They asked him if he would go home with Dr. Dolittle. The push-me-pull-you shook his head hard. "Certainly not," he said. For 3 days and 3 nights the monkeys tried to persuade him. Then at last he said, "I will come with you and see what kind of man this doctor is." The push-me-pull-you took one look at Dr. Dolittle. He saw at once that the doctor was a very good man. The push-me-pull-you said, "You have been most kind to all these monkeys. I have made up my mind. I will go with you." Then the doctor, the doctor's animals, and the push-me-pull-you started back to the seashore. The monkeys went with them to see them off. It took a long time to say farewell. Hundreds and thousands of monkeys wanted to shake the doctor by the hand and thank him for making them well again. Then the push-me-pull-you, Gub-Gub, Dab-Dab, Jip, Tutu, Polynesia, and Chee-Chee all went on the ship with the doctor. Soon they were out of sight of land. The wide, wide sea looked terribly big and lonesome. They lost their way. They had no more food. There was no wind to fill the sail. Dr. Dolittle said, "I am afraid we are never going to get home." But then they heard a strange noise high in the air. It grew louder and louder and louder. Birds, millions of them, millions of swallows flying fast. The swallows saw the ship. They came down close. They swooped and skimmed over the water. They took hold of ropes with their feet. Away they flew. They pulled the ship along behind them. Now the doctor was traveling fast. He had to hold onto his hat with both hands. The swallows flew on and on. They pulled and pulled. They pulled the ship to England in almost no time at all. The winter sun was shining when the doctor got back to his own country. It was good to be home at last. Every night after supper, the doctor and his animals would sit around the big warm fire. Then the doctor would read aloud to them. He would read them the big book he was writing about their trip to faraway Africa. Africa, the land they would never forget, the land where the monkeys chattered in the palm trees, the land where they found the wonderful push-me-pull-you. The end.